Yo, Jason.
Good morning or evening, depending on where you are, right?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
You're good? Good?
Bright and early Tuesday morning.
Perfect. So today, I want to talk with you about how to stay in shape over 40.
I know nothing about this topic.
I want to get right to the point and start with the question. Is it possible to lose body fat at 40 or over? Yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
Actually,
not.
Obviously, absolutely yes. Yes.
That's a clear yes. Is it possible to gain muscle at 40 or over? Yes or no?
100% yes. 100% yes.
Good. I think we just debunked a myth here, right? Because many people out there, they use this as an excuse, their age, for being obese, for not working out, for not eating healthily, for not being in shape. And I want to talk about that today. And I mean, you're the ideal partner to talk about that, because
slow down.
You're not only an online fitness coach too, with a lot of experience with working with people, younger and older ones, but you're actually also over 40 years old.
Indeed. How did that happen? I'm not sure, really.
Looks like 30, but is actually older than 40. So
yes. Yeah. We're not gonna get into the details, but yes,
actually, that's what I want to. That's what I want to.
Over 40.
Let's talk about that a little bit, about you and your background. How old are you?
42 point about 6 or 7. Oh God, 0.75.
Perfect. So over 40. That's accurate. How long have you been working out at this point?
Wow. Over 20 years, probably pretty close to 24-ish, 25. It's a long time. It's been a long time. Yeah.
Well, you were in, what is it, high school?
It was pretty much right at the end of high school that I introduced myself to the gym and resistance training. So round about when I was 18-ish, if my old fading memory serves correctly.
What was the reason you started with weightlifting?
It's a good question. I think partially I was never a super athletic guy. You know, I wasn't the guy that did tons of sports in high school. Team sports just weren't that appealing to me, to be honest. That's just my introverted personality type. You know, you throw introversion with type A tendencies into a person, and suddenly you don't have the best team sport person, right? Working out it just seemed pretty interesting. Definitely recognized it's an individual sport, right? You are pretty much on your own, unless you have a training partner, but you're pretty much on your own. You know, figured it would be just something fun to do. And, you know, I realized that it was a lot of fun. It was challenging. You know, I like challenges. And pretty much what you put in some sense, is what you got out. Now, it's not a direct one-to-one correlation or put this in, get this out.
Did you have any specific goal at this point? Let's say you want to look like a bodybuilder, you want to compete or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't precisely remember back then sort of the motivations, but I'm sure that a part of the motivation was to change my appearance in some way, right? I was never, well, at that point, I wasn't skinny, I wasn't fat, I was somewhere in between. There was some muscle, but it was just not obvious. Like it was buried under a couple of layers of fat. And so, you know, I knew I could, with some effort, change that look and that body composition. And so you know.
So it was, the main reason was looks, like as in most
it's a hard question to answer. I think so. I can't tell you for sure, but I know a large part of it was something fun to do. Because I wasn't the guy playing tons of sports, right? So I guess most teenagers are looking for sort of that fun physical outlet, and for me that was you know, getting into the gym for the first time.
All right. So it started with like about 18, and now we're 42. That's like a lot of years of lifting, a lot of experience. Obviously, getting in shape and staying in shape is a bit different, although the principles are the same. Would you say, with that much experience and you've been so long in the game, do you have an advantage over someone who's just starting out at age 40?
Yes, but no. The two positions of being, starting out in your teens versus being in your 40s, each of those have different advantages, right? I would say from a purely muscle gain, body fat loss rate of progress, if you're 18 or 19, you have the advantage over somebody like me, for sure, hands down, right?
Yeah.
The flip side is, and I remember my 18, 19, 20, 25, 30-year-old brain, there's a lot of maturity that I now have that has helped me to see things differently and be more strategic with how I engage in the gym and how I engage just the different factors within my life to be able to optimize things, right? Okay. So there are different advantages. And I think if you could put a 40-year-old brain into a 19-year-old, you'd have a winning combination, right? But which 19-year-old wants to be mentally 40? Like nobody at 19.
I think so. Like
40
at this young
grave.
Yeah, at this young age, you certainly have like the hormones that play for you. Obviously, you have usually more energy. You can also
zero responsibility.
Zero responsibility, more time. You get away probably with more fast food and junk too. Coming back to what he said, some things are better now. You have a different view on certain things. Can you give me an example on that? Is there something specific you're saying?
Things that are better now than then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at 19, unless you have really good mentors who are further along and knowledgeable, because those two things aren't necessarily the same.
True.
As well as the sort of mental receptivity to advice, that you actually want the advice and you actually plan on implementing it. That's totally different now. I remember at 19, I mean, even though I knew next to nothing, there wasn't the mindset of, oh, this person who is 40 or 50 knows so much more than me. I need to absolutely absorb everything I can from them and implement it. It's one thing to get advice at 19. Like, do you follow the advice you get at 19? I mean, come on. It's rare.
Very true.
Right? You look at 40-year-olds as dinosaurs. Like, what are you talking about? Maybe back in your day, not in my day. So
talking about a source of information and where you get this advice from. I mean, nowadays it's easier with social media. You can just follow influencers. Whether that's good or advice or not is another question. But
yes,
usually you can go on the internet and search everything you want to know about fat loss, about gaining muscle mass. Where did you get all the information from when you started out? Because social media wasn't that big back then, right?
I mean, social media, honestly, I mean, this is how I know I'm old, right? Social media literally didn't exist. Facebook was not around. Like, that's Facebook, let alone Instagram, right? I didn't even have access to the internet at that age. So, most of my information, if you will, came by just word of mouth advice from people in the gym. Now, there were a couple of people, again, much older than I was, who were willing to provide advice. Again, there's a difference between what was brought to me and what I absorbed and implemented. And then, back then there were magazines, Men's Health, Men's Fitness, whatever. And
best source of information, right?
I mean, back then it was like, where else would you find this? There was nowhere else. There was literally nowhere else.
Yeah. Well, I'm a bit younger, a little bit, but me too. Like I would open these like fitness and health magazines and just follow their training plans and whatnot. Yeah. It would also, like what he said, word of mouth in the gym, like broad talk, and some of it was not that useful information or quite shitty advice.
You just don't know. You just do whatever.
You don't know.
And again, it goes back to the 19-year-old brain. The 19-year-old brain of a guy, at least. I mean, for women, it's probably a little bit different. But a 19-year-old guy's brain isn't, oh, you guys are totally right. I am a total idiot. I'm going to follow exactly what you. That's just not the way it works. Unfortunately.
I wish I would have had like It Depends fitness show. Like we have every Thursday evening, someone who would just guide me and give me actual advice that is appropriate 100%. And that you can like implement. But yeah, looking back now over all these years of lifting, when did you make the best gains, the best results? Like at what age was that? Was it very beginning, when you were older, somewhere in between?
That's actually a really hard question to answer, if I'm honest. If I think back, I think I did pretty well, considering, not knowing much of anything, between starting at 18 or 19 and maybe about 24-ish, 25-ish. Most of that was through brute force and luck, right? Brute force in the sense that exercise execution wasn't exactly the best it could have been. It wasn't optimal. There's a lot of, at that age, a lot of the mentality that you can just lift heavy and you're just invincible, and so you do, not intelligently, but you do it. And at that point, you're biologically, I was in a state, where I was primed to get the most out of it, right? I wasn't exposed to resistance training previously. So the adaptations came fast, right? Now,
but yeah, on the other hand, I want to challenge that, because in the beginning, you didn't have a lot of information. Obviously, you got the so-called newbie gains, right? You went from an untrained state, and then you started working out at all stimuli, and obviously you saw results. However, over time, let's say 5 years into your lifting career, quote unquote, you had much more experience. You already knew what's working and what not. Would you not say you had more know-how, more knowledge, and therefore you made better progress?
I'm going to pause you right there, because everything in context, right? So by the time I had been through, so exposure at 18 or 19, and then lifting more in college, when I was 24, I went to grad school and continued. Now, the time period between 24 and 30 was an absolute hellscape, right? So even though I was still lifting in the gym, that was also the time point where I was, intermittently eating garbage and a lot of it, and getting fat, to be clear. Obviously it would go back and forth, up and down, but massive stress load for those 6 years. So even with more knowledge, there was less motivation, if you will, and implementation of the knowledge based on life circumstances. So that's a big piece to sort of my story, my sort of trajectory and history with fitness, right? And
that makes sense.
It's one that I can't ignore, right? Now, transitioning from that time period into the world of professional work, some things changed and some things stayed the same. Now I had like real responsibility, and the time I could dedicate to lifting completely changed, right? That became really suboptimal despite information and knowledge. Similarly, if I thought grad school was stressful, I was wrong. The world of work is even more stressful.
Yeah,
right?
I can relate. Yeah, I can totally relate, because also I know, for example, that 8 hours of sleep is probably best, or I should sleep that much. But sometimes
it's hard.
When my daughter gets up in the middle of the night, or she doesn't want to sleep or whatnot, then it's maybe just 6, sometimes even 5. And I know I should sleep more, but it's real life, right?
Yeah. So here's the other reason why I feel like asking that question is really difficult to answer. Because even though I had that window of time where the newbie gains came really fast and easy, if I look back at my physique at 25 and I look at my physique at 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, absolutely, I have been in my best shape ever between about 38 and now. Like, there's just no comparison. So
why do you think that is?
Well, that's now the actual implementation of knowledge strategically. Like, that's the difference. For sure. And it's not because I'm in my biological prime at 38 through now. It's a game of recognizing what's important versus what I can do, and sort of bridging those two to execute consistently. And that
good answer. I love that. basically knowing what to implement or how to work out very smartly, so you can get the best out of it, even though you have other responsibilities, that you're busy and so on, and then you just put everything together, and that makes absolute sense.
And the willingness to do it, because I shouldn't even say the willingness, because it doesn't lie at the feet of what you want. It's what you're willing and able to do, and recognizing what's realistic versus not realistic, and time frame as well. It all comes together, and so many people, in particular people my age and older, it's one thing to aspire towards something and another thing to recognize what you have available in your life, and therefore based on what you have available to give to the process, what should you reasonably expect out of it? And that's a big gap that people need to bridge if they're honest with themselves.
Very true.
Yeah.
Now, before you talk that at some point you got even a little fat. It's your words, not mine.
Yes.
How has your physique evolved over all these years? Did you get more mass at some point? Did you just no longer want to get bigger? Did you want to get more defined, or how did you evolve as physique wise? Right.
Yeah. So I guess I'll try to separate those into two things, right? So one, what I wanted, and two, what I achieved, right? Because 18 through 30, mid 30s, it was like get bigger, get bigger, get bigger, not fatter. Try to gain more muscle, right? And yes, there was the 235 pound fat period in there that we will no longer speak of.
Crazy.
But yeah, muscle gains totally happened during that time. There was no really good sense of a good aesthetic body composition until my mid to late 30s. But yes, what I wanted out of the process did change from gain as much mass as possible to achieving the best physique possible. And those two are different, because a lot of the physique you achieve and present to the world is that balance between your body fat levels and the amount of lean tissue that you have. And that's, that essentially illusion of being large and muscular oftentimes comes down to having a decent amount of lean tissue, but being also, having a lower body fat percentage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's sort of the magical combination.
What's your goal today? Like, do you want to get bigger? Based on what you just said, probably not. Why do you train nowadays?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, with my focus on growing my business, I can't say to you I have massive goals of gaining 10 more pounds of muscle. Partially because it's not realistic for the lifestyle I've created for myself. It's not the ultimate priority for me right now. But yes, knowing that I'm getting older, my goal is to, number one, preserve the lean tissue that I have, make whatever incremental gains I can while sort of living a sustainable, sane life, if you will. And then a piece of that is not focusing so heavily on gaining muscle that I accumulate body fat to a degree where I'm not within 2 months of being super lean, photo shoot ready, if you will.
This being said, you still work out 5 times a week, right?
Yes, 5.
If you really wanted to build muscle mass, do you think it would work, or what would you change, basically?
That's more of a mindset shift, right? I would have to prioritize my recovery more, so my sleep more. I would need to manage my stress levels a bit better. I would probably optimize my nutrition a little bit more, but it's just not there. The level of priority that it would need to reach in my mind in order to consistently be able to execute on those things isn't there. And I recognize that.
Got it. At some point you competed. How old were you?
37 and change.
37? Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And would you say this was like you were in top shape, best shape of your life?
That's the leanest I've been.
The leanest, yeah, because like obviously you went on a diet for, I don't know, 12 weeks or even more, and that's probably a hardcore diet, right?
Yeah, I wasn't too far out. So I mean, yes, it was about a 12-week prep. Yes, it was difficult in the sense that, I mean, I've always been a pretty adherent person. If I decide to do something, I just do it. I'm a creature of habit. I enjoy it. I thrive on structure, right? In terms of just overall physique, that's probably the second best I've been, or third best. Right around 39 or 40, I was probably the best overall package. So a little bit more muscle mass and almost as lean. Not stage ready, but almost there.
Did you hear that, guys? Everyone who's listening at this age. So I'm 29, right? So watch me at 39. Watch me. I still have 10 years. I still have 10 years. So yeah.
It seems truly counterintuitive, but I can very confidently say right around 40, 41, best shape.
Do you think you will beat that shape someone in the future even?
You're asking me to project whether I will want it. I think that's the question.
Yeah.
Because if at any point I want it, I don't doubt that I can.
Okay. So it is possible. It is possible.
Absolutely. 100%.
To look your absolute best at age 45, maybe 47.
I'm not going to push it too far, but I mean, at almost 43, I do have still a good window of opportunity to be equally as good as.
Yeah. But you know, if you dial in everything, you can still look your absolute best at this age now.
100%.
That's good to know. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about how your training evolved. Like when you started out back then versus today, what has changed in your training regimen?
The one thing that probably hasn't changed too much is, well, I was going to say training frequency. So I've always trained at least 4 times a week over that span of time. Now,
is there any period you have not lifted or worked out at all? Like,
yes.
How long was this break?
And I hated it, 100%. There were 2 periods. One in 2000, and I want to say it was 2003, and it's because I fell on ice and really hurt my shoulder. So that took me out for a few months, just for general healing, physical therapy, and so on.
It's annoying.
And then, ironically, other shoulder, left shoulder this time, back in 2014, if you can believe somebody can get injured paddleboarding, it's this guy. So I hurt my other shoulder paddleboarding, and then that took me out for another couple months to rehab my left shoulder. But
it was both like injuries. Was not because you were not in the mood or because you didn't want to. You were basically forced to take some time off.
Exactly.
Coming back to the question,
not like taking time off.
Like good, me neither. We went now another route here, but I want to come back to the question how your training changed over the years. So maybe we can elaborate on that.
Yeah. So I think I led off in another question with the fact that when I started, I didn't know anything, right? And so to go from there to here, a lot has changed because there's been a lot of accumulated knowledge and experience. If you were to ask what the big rocks are, like the biggest or most important things that have changed, that have made the largest difference, I would say 2 things. Number one is exercise execution. So the way I perform exercise or exercises, understanding the internal focus, how to generate tension, how to remain stable, that sort of thing. And creating the link between that knowledge and the actual acquisition of the skill to do it. Because the frustrating or difficult part for anybody is how well do you implement what you consciously know? That's hard, right? You can think about any muscular cue or any exercise cue related to optimizing execution. That's one thing, but then being able to train your mind, your neuromuscular system to do it is different, right? And that for me is a challenging thing. But that's been one big difference. And then the second is, over the course of time, understanding what exercises provide me and my structure the most benefit, right? There are things.
Have you even followed a plan, a structured workout plan back then, like you do now?
Wow, back then, I mean, that's 20 years of back then. I would say intermittently throughout most of that time, yes. Programs that were intelligent and that fit me, the minority of that time, knowing that, of course, the minority of over 20 years can be 10, right? So still a lot of time spent in more optimal programming, but definitely time, quote unquote, wasted in suboptimal. And
to be fair, though, it's kind of normal, right? If you start out, then you do like what feels right and whatever you want to do probably in the gym, and you follow maybe even a plan that is absolutely not optimal for you.
Yeah, when you start out just wanting to have fun, you do whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I started with like this typical bro split, right? Like one body part per day, like 5 times per week, like to the gym, and it worked for a while, but eventually I stagnated actually pretty quickly.
The good thing is at 19, you're kind of bulletproof.
Yeah,
that's
true. Like no matter what you do, you start making gains. That's true.
And you don't get quite as injured. And when you get injured, it's like, oh, you bounce right back in a couple of weeks. It's like, it's amazing. It's not like that now.
True. Whatever you do, it's working, right? Yeah. Have you ever done CrossFit or calisthenics or any other modality other than typical bodybuilding / strength training?
I really haven't. So let's take those individually. Calisthenics, I mean, not as a full program itself. Calisthenic movements here and there throughout the years, but as a very minor part of anything that I'm doing overall. CrossFit, I really haven't gotten into CrossFit at all.
You're not a fan.
Luckily or unluckily, I mean, in grad school, when I hurt my right shoulder, I did so many months of physical therapy, and I had a really good physical therapist who was, super knowledgeable about a lot of stuff. And, one thing that hit me loud and clear is, he said he wouldn't be in business if it weren't for CrossFit. And I mean, that's a mic drop right there, right? With the idea that CrossFit in many cases doesn't provide you the foundational skill and knowledge to be able to perform compound lifts in a way that is safe. And not everybody is built to perform some of those compound movements under significant load based on their body structure regardless. And so when you layer that on top of time pressure or total rep pressure, now you're literally chasing the injury. You are actively running towards the injury. And
so he was basically saying all his patients were a CrossFitter. Yeah. But we don't want to hate on CrossFit here.
No, so, CrossFit can be very successful and a lot of fun, particularly because of the community that's around CrossFit. Yeah. But I think a prerequisite is knowledge and patience and taking the time to build movement skill well before you go 100%.
Maybe we can even address that in another session, because I believe like everyone is talking shit about CrossFitter, whereas in a typical gym you can also see like people 100%. Doing weird stuff and performing the exercises completely wrong, so it's actually dangerous for them. But
what bothers me, and I mean, I'm not hating on CrossFit, because there's a lot of benefit to be had there from the style of training that is done. What I'm challenged with is, and this is particularly the younger you are, if I put my 19-year-old self into a CrossFit gym knowing absolutely nothing but being ready to take on the world, I would have killed myself, right? And so it's, how do you take highly beneficial exercise modalities but start in a place of education and support to get people to that place? And it's hard. And it's very attractive because there's such a good community around fitness within CrossFit. So I think it has a lot of continued potential and value. I would just ask people starting out in CrossFit to slow down. Yeah.
All right. So you've never done CrossFit, never done a lot of calisthenics. That's the bottom line, basically. Just like strength training to answer this question. What about your diet? Like we just talked about how your training has evolved, or that's basically was more or less the same, with the difference that you've followed different workout plans. What about diet? How has your diet changed?
Very good question. It has gone from I don't care about anything. If I see it, I'm going to eat it because I want to.
The seafood diet, right?
Seafood diet. I've been through periods of that. I've been through periods of, no, I actively want to eat garbage because my life right now is very stressful and this is going to provide me some emotional happiness and comfort. To, okay, how on earth do I get super lean? I'm going to go super ultra low carb, not really even truly keto. I'm just going to kind of starve myself a little bit and not smart. You know, I've been all over the map over the years. Like if you sort of name a diet, I'm not going to say trend because I don't necessarily want to assign a name to anything that I've tried. But in terms of where the nutrition comes from and how many calories, I've been high calorie, low calorie, high protein, high fat, low, high carb, low fat. I've been all over the map.
There's everything out there and you can read a lot, but once you do it yourself, you have like a clear result, you know what is working, how it feels also, and like what it does to your social life and all that. So I think it's good to try out different diets, at least for us, for the coaches, and then we can give this knowledge to our clients and tell them, okay, stay away from this diet or this is how you can do it. It's probably the better way. Okay.
Yeah, knowing that it's really just based on who you are and what's going on in life.
Well, what's your diet like nowadays?
Yeah, so
briefly.
I think I mentioned I totally thrive on structure and habit. Like that is just the way my brain works, and I'm pretty happy when I almost know every day what's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And that's because decision fatigue frustrates me. I don't like to sit down and think about something as simple as what am I going to eat right now.
Structure is everything. You're saying you're having more or less the same meals, which is great, but just having some kind of structure is everything. And tell them my clients, I know that myself. And you're even saying you have the exact same meals 3 times a day. So
like for very long stretches of time, and then I change it up. But I actually,
how does this meal look like right now?
I mean, if anyone has ever seen my Instagram,
they
know exactly what I'm having every single morning for breakfast. I love eggs. There's eggs plus egg whites plus vegetables in a nice large round egg pizza.
Egg pizza.
Right?
Lunch. And then lunch.
Lunch is going to be some form of relatively lean protein, and then some sort of complex carb, rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes. There's going to be vegetables as well. Post-workout, there's going to be some
let's stop here quickly for my clients right here. What he just said is what we call the lean plate. So exactly that. It's like a lean source of protein. It's complex carbohydrates. It's vegetable. This put together. And I don't tell them exactly what to eat, but basically, what he just said. So that's pretty cool. So go on, post-workout.
Yeah, post-workout, some sort of rapidly digesting protein and carb source for replenishment. So usually, I mean, that hasn't evolved very much over the years. Thankfully, I don't have any real sensitivities to dairy, so it's usually some sort of whey-based protein. The carb has changed intermittently over time. I've done oatmeal with things like fruit, berries. Right now I'm doing Rice Krispies cereal, which might seem insane, but it's rice. It's literally rice that's air puffed, right? So still low sugar, but in a pretty rapidly absorbing form. For replenishment. Usually some fruit with that. Dinner looks a lot like lunch, to be honest. Snacks can be a little bit, I wouldn't say all over the map, but things that find their way into my snack life are going to be like protein bars, yogurt of various kinds, rice cakes, that sort of stuff.
Take notes, guys. take notes right here. He just gave away his diet, and
it's not a secret.
It's that simple. It's that simple, really. Like very, very clean, whole foods. Like you haven't mentioned any junk. Like high.
Well, we haven't spoken
diet,
about
obviously.
the weekend yet, have we? No, I'm just joking.
Then you go overboard and just like smash everything.
I will say, a piece of chocolate makes it into my life essentially every day. Not every day, but most days. Chocolate.
It's good for you.
It's delicious.
It is. Like I stay away because I know if I have a little piece, then I will want more and more. But some clients do this as well. Those you need to know yourself, right? Like there's two kind of people, in my opinion. Those who can have this one piece of chocolate and are happy. You seem to be one of them. My fiance is also one of them. She can have.
I have budgeted my macros and calories to have my chocolate. I'm having it.
That's good. Like if I have one, I know I want a second and a third and the entire
20,
package.
yes.
So I'd rather stay away from that. Something I want to talk about here, to kind of wrap it off, is recovery. And it's no secret that hormones change once you get older, that testosterone declines, and testosterone is very important when it comes to building muscle mass and losing body fat. Do you get your blood checked regularly, or like how do you know?
I have to say I don't. I get to my PCP usually once a year.
Okay.
There have been periods where it's been longer than that, and get the usual, full panel of blood work done. But I really don't track any of my hormone levels more than that.
So what's your take? As long as you're making gains, as long as you feel okay, you leave it at that, or?
Yeah, it just comes down to your priorities, right? I mean, right now my priority isn't build as much muscle as possible, in which case I'd probably care, right? I feel great. I don't have any issues, so I don't have any real reason to go towards let me start really routinely checking these levels. But if I were in the mindset that I wanted to make absolutely as much muscular gain as possible, then I would be more interested in doing that.
Makes sense.
The flip side of recovery. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Just talking about recovery. What else do you do for recovery? Because in my opinion, the body doesn't recover as good. Well, it comes probably down to the fact that you have more going on in your life right now than back then, and you're having a business and more stress and everything. So what do you do for recovery specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll throw myself under the bus. First of all, to acknowledge that I could and I ought to do more, right? Sleep is a big priority in my life. And, I speak with my clients day in and day out about the importance of getting, enough good quality sleep. My goal has been for years to be above 7 hours per night on average. And, thankfully I am. Hopefully sometime in the future, I can make more than 8 hours, more than 9 hours a priority and actually execute on that. Right now, I can't, right? There's a lot of other moving pieces that are also priorities. And so finding balance between those different pieces is important.
I think this is very, very difficult because you know how important it is, but at the same time, there's maybe the businessman in you that wants to work all the time, and you can sleep when you're dead kind of mentality, right? So
there still exists a little of that, but yeah, I mean, I would say not quite as much as 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, 5 hours sleep, I'd be like, whatever, let's keep going, right? Now it's much more of a priority for sure, and I will sacrifice some things in order to be able to sleep. I will just stop working and move on. But I have an absolute type A workaholic brain, so it is forcing that switch off that is a challenge, and probably will always be a challenge for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this issue, right? They want to do as much as possible in a day, and sleep comes short. It's no secret, and like just that everyone out there knows that even if you work out every single day and your diet is okay, like if you lack sleep, your progress will not be optimal. It's just a fact.
100%.
Yeah. Good. Now, as we made this clear, I want to ask you a question about coaching. Like, you're an online coach too, exactly like me. Now, let's say you have 2 new clients. One of them is 20 years old, and the other one is 40 years old. Like, what workout program would you prescribe them, and what would be the difference?
Oh, we're gonna go back to sort of our favorite response, which is it depends, right? it does. There are some assumptions, since we're going with hypotheticals, there's some assumptions I can make. I can make the assumption that the person who's 20 is, if not brand new, relatively new to resistance training, right? And so there's a little bit more latitude in terms of how much that person can be pushed when they're ready to be pushed, right? If they're brand new, I mean, what we're focusing on right out of the gate is just exercise execution and the absolute basics of nutrition, right? No secret there. For someone who's 40, my assumption as well is that they have had some exposure over the past number of years, probably 20 or so, to resistance training, in which case it's understanding what they've done, how they've done it, if we need to intervene on sort of modifying execution skill. My assumption as well is wear and tear on the body has accumulated over the past 40 years. So understanding that injury history and optimizing exercise execution for what they're capable of doing safely is going to be, super important. And then at 40 versus 20, the level of responsibility and busyness, if you will, is totally different usually.
Very true.
So
very true.
Understanding much more clearly what it is that the 40-year-old client brings to me in terms of availability and ability to execute
let's say both can work out 3 times per week. They both have a year of experience. Would you actually give them different exercises?
Yes. Okay. Are we going to also assume that they have very similar body structures and very similar sort of mobility and ability to move weight? Sure. I mean, starting out, the training program is going to be quite simplistic, right? Giving ourselves room to progress down the road, both along exercise continuum and then training variables for periodization and progressive overload. So yeah, I mean, initially those training programs could look quite similar, especially if we're just talking about 3 times per week.
I think so. I think so. I mean,
how they progress beyond that is going to start to diverge a little bit. Particularly I agree. Based on what's going on in life.
I like that answer.
Yeah.
Cool. What else do I need to know? I made some notes here. Let's see what I missed. Yeah, one more question I want to ask you. If you reflect your entire lifting career, like, what would you do differently if you could start again? If you were 18 years old, what would you tell your young self to do differently? What advice would you give you?
Wow. I have to think about it because it depends. What would my younger self actually listen to? And that's, I don't know. I would say pay more attention to my body and, what feels right versus not. That's the first thing. Be more open and receptive to advice from people who have demonstrated practical knowledge. And that's a really hard thing for a 19, 20-year-old to do. And then as well, I think just being patient. By nature, I'm not a patient person, but have come to value the importance of patience along this sort of journey. It's so easy to fall into the trap, and I have many times, of if I do this, then this is the result I will get in this period of time. And really that narrative has been false almost every time, right? And I would also say let go of expectations that are tied to someone else. And what I mean is, and this is particularly relevant for anyone starting out now or in the past couple of years, because of the explosion in social media and particularly the explosion in fitness related social media around body composition, body type, aesthetics, essentially setting up this unrealistic expectation of people who are not on steroids, essentially. And that's a place where I think younger people are going to be absolutely more vulnerable, right? Yeah. So understanding that you're probably never going to look like that person that you see. You're only going to ever look like yourself, but you have an opportunity to look like the best version of yourself. And that's sort of what 100%. You need to have in mind and patiently 100%. Pursue.
Yeah. Very good advice right here. And I couldn't agree more, to be honest. Like at this age, you're just very ignorant. And especially the first point you mentioned here, listen to your body, listen to what feels right. I mean, like at some point I was totally overtrained. And like I knew I'm having some digestion issues with some things I'm eating. However, because it was on the plan.
Brute force.
Like, brute force. Just like execute, go. Even though it didn't feel right. Just like, yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, there are points and periods along the way where brute force is important, but it's not all the time. It's usually for short spurts.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Cool.
Oh, what happens when you get old? Put this brain into 19-year-olds.
That would be cool. That would be so cool. Dude, last question.
Yeah.
3 tips for someone who is 40 and wants to look exactly like you.
I'm going to go back to the tips I just gave. Number 1, you won't look like me. And that's, you probably will look better than I do. The point is, you'll only look like the best version of yourself. Get that into your mind first. Secondly, be very clear with yourself what it is you want, and then try to reconcile what you want versus what you can do. Because when what you want and what you can do don't align, that's a recipe for frustration, right? And sometimes you're not going to know what's realistic, and that's where someone else can come in and help you to understand, through questioning and unraveling what it is you are willing, able, and ready to do based on everything in your life versus what you say you want. And be like, okay, those 2 things are, here and here. How do we get here? Like, we have to either increase what you have available or decrease the expectation or expand the timeline.
Love it.
But the final thing I'll say is the sort of best you is possible. 100%. Don't feel as if, oh, you're 40, your physical prime is behind you, therefore all is wasted. Absolutely not. Maybe your absolute biologic prime was 28, 29, 30, 32, whatever it was. That's fine. It doesn't mean that 40 is nothing. 40 is not 100.
Dude, I'm looking forward to being 40 and hopefully be also in top shape. Like
you just erase that word, hopefully.
I will be.
There you go.
I mean, I love, like, whenever a client, and I coach a lot of clients who are older than me, in their 40s, sometimes even their 50s, and they get fantastic results. Sometimes they're just starting out in their fitness journey and they get these newbie gains still. But I see that it's working. I see your pictures on and like how you evolve at this age. So this motivates me, and you certainly motivate not only me but like many others. So thank you for that. That's pretty cool.
I appreciate it.
I hope that I'm going to be in the same position when I'm 40, and like I said,
you're going to be way ahead.
It's possible. And we'll see. I mean, like for now, for me, it's like, okay, I was young, I was in good shape. Okay, just wait until you have a business. So I have a business. Let's wait until you're a parent. Now I'm a parent, and I'm doing good, but I'm still young. So
you are still young.
I'm excited to see where I will be in 10 years or whatever.
Yes.
Catch up. Jason, that was fantastic. There was a lot of value that he gave here in the last 50 minutes. We wanted to keep it under 30. Now
I blame you, the interviewer.
Yeah. No, you're just like, it's very interesting, and you have so much information, so much experience to share. So thank you very much for coming on here, for sharing all this value. Was cool. Was really 100%. Cool, this entire thing. I will talk to you on Thursday
Yes.
on our It Depends fitness show as
I will
on
be
every
here.
week. Maybe where can people follow you? Because this is streamed on my channels.
Sure. So my primary social media outlet is Instagram, where I'm Jason Carnegie _IF. IF for Inspired Fitness. So find me there. Send me DMs. I also have a YouTube channel. I will throw myself under the bus. I have not been very active on YouTube recently, but maybe I'll put a copy of this conversation onto YouTube. You'll find it there as well.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
For a moment, I was
just
like,
search Jason
IF,
Carnegie in
intermittent
YouTube,
fasting. What are we talking here? No, all good. I will also link your social media handles in the comments so they can find you quickly.
Yep.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Good, Jason. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for everybody that joined.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
It was a good time.
Until next time, I would say.
Until the next one.
Jason, have a great day. Let's talk soon.
See you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Bye.